Jedediah clutched the reins, his gaze fixed on the horizon. Dust devils danced across the parched land, mimicking the swirling emptiness in his own heart. The sun beat down on his weathered face, each line etched deeper by the relentless years and the recent, stinging loss of his beloved Sarah. She'd been gone 6 months now, taken too soon by a fever that swept through the small settlement like a prairie fire. His farm, once a vibrant testament to their shared dreams, now felt like a silent tomb. The fields, though still producing, lacked the joyful energy Sarah had always brought to them. The rows of corn seemed to droop, mirroring his own posture. Even the chickens seemed to cluck with a mournful tone. Jedediah was a man of simple pleasures and unwavering work ethic. He rose before dawn each day, tending to his crops and livestock with a quiet dedication. He'd always been a strong, capable man, but Sarah's passing had left a void that threatened to swallow him whole. His days were filled with labor, but his nights were haunted by memories. He'd often find himself sitting on the porch swing, the same swing where he and Sarah had spent countless evenings, watching the sunset paint the sky in hues of orange and purple. Now, the colors seemed muted, the joy replaced by a dull ache. The nearest town, Harmony Creek, was a day's ride by wagon. Jedediah usually only made the trip when absolutely necessary, to sell his crops, purchase essential supplies, or occasionally to pick up the mail, hoping for a letter from his distant sister. He wasn't a man for crowds or idle chatter. He preferred the solitude of his farm, even in its current state of sorrow. His farmhouse, though modest, was sturdy and well-built, a reflection of Jedediah himself. Sarah had always kept it tidy and welcoming, filling it with the aroma of freshly baked bread and the sound of her gentle humming. Now, the house felt cold and empty, despite Jedediah's best efforts to maintain it. He tried to keep things as Sarah would have wanted, but it was a constant reminder of her absence. He missed her laugh, her touch, her unwavering optimism. He missed everything about her. He was a farmer, a provider, a survivor, but without Sarah, he was simply alone. And that loneliness was a burden heavier than any he'd ever carried. It pressed down on him, stealing his breath and dimming the light in his eyes. He needed a change, a spark, something to reignite the embers of life within him. But what? He had no idea. The journey to Harmony Creek was never easy, but this time it felt particularly arduous. The old wagon wheels groaned under the weight of the few crates of corn and squashed Jedediah, hoped to sell. The dry, dusty road stretched out before him, an endless ribbon of brown under the relentless sun. The horses, Betsy and Clyde, plodded along with weary resignation, their flanks slick with sweat. Jedediah worried about the price he'd get for his crops. The harvest had been meager this year, and everyone was struggling. He needed to buy flour, sugar, and coffee, staples that Sarah had always ensured were plentiful in their pantry. Now, he had to ration them carefully, stretching each bag and jar as far as it would go. He also needed new boots. His current pair were worn through, offering little protection against the rough terrain. And then there was the matter of the taxes. They were due soon, and he wasn't sure he'd have enough to cover them. Losing the farm was a constant, nagging fear. He urged Betsy and Clyde onward, snapping the reins gently. The landscape blurred into a monotonous cycle of scrub brush and rocky hills. The sun climbed higher in the sky, baking the earth and turning the air thick and heavy. Jedediah pulled his hat lower over his eyes, shielding them from the glare. He chewed on a piece of dried beef, his only sustenance for the long journey. As he rode, he mentally tallied his expenses. The flour would cost at least $1, sugar another 50 cents, and coffee. Well, coffee was a luxury these days. The boots would be the biggest expense, probably $2 or more. And the taxes, he didn't even want to think about the taxes. He'd have to try and get a good price for his crops, perhaps haggle a bit with Mr. Henderson at the general store. Mr. Henderson was a shrewd businessman, but Jedediah had always been fair with him. The thought of Sarah flickered through his mind. She had always been good at bartering, charming even the most stubborn merchants with her warm smile and quick wit. He missed her knack for finding the best deals, her ability to stretch $1 further than anyone he knew. He sighed, the sound lost in the vastness of the landscape. He wished she were here, not just for her bartering skills, but for her companionship, her unwavering support. He missed her practicality, her level-headedness when facing financial hardship. She always knew how to make the best of any situation. Now, he felt lost and uncertain, adrift in a sea of financial worries and loneliness. The road to Harmony Creek seemed longer than ever before. The noise of Harmony Creek hit Jedediah like a wall. After the quiet solitude of his farm, the bustling town square was a chaotic symphony of shouting merchants, clattering wagons, and the constant murmur of voices. He guided Betsy and Clyde through the crowded streets, heading towards the train station. It was located on the edge of town and had a large open area where he could park his wagon while he ran his errands. The train station was even more chaotic than the town square. People rushed to and fro, boarding and disembarking the newly arrived train. Luggage was piled high, and the air was thick with the smell of coal smoke and anticipation. As Jedediah secured his wagon, he noticed a small group of people gathered near the station platform, their heads bent together in what appeared to be a hushed conversation. Curiosity piqued, Jedediah moved closer, intending to find Mr. Henderson's general store. As he passed the group, he couldn't help but overhear snippets of their conversation. Poor thing left at the altar. Can you imagine? All that way. And look at her. No wonder he ran. Jedediah frowned. He couldn't quite make out who they were talking about, but the tone of their voices was unmistakable, cruel, and judgmental. He moved closer still, tried to get a better look. Then he saw her. Sitting alone on a wooden bench, away from the hustle and bustle, was a woman. She was dressed in a beautiful, but now rumpled, wedding dress. The white fabric was stained with dust, and the delicate lace was torn in several places. Her head was bowed, and her shoulders shook with silent sobs. She held a small, embroidered handkerchief clutched tightly in her hand. Jedediah couldn't help but notice that she was a large woman. Not just tall, but round, with a generous figure that filled the bench. He also noticed that her face, though tear-streaked and swollen, was beautiful. She had kind eyes, a gentle mouth, and a wealth of soft, brown hair that cascaded down her back. But the onlookers only saw her size. He probably couldn't even lift her into the wagon, one woman whispered, earning a snicker from her companions. Imagine the cost of feeding her, another added, her voice dripping with disdain. Jedediah felt a surge of anger rising within him. He'd never been one for gossip or cruelty. He couldn't stand to see someone being treated so unfairly, especially when they were already down. He clenched his fists, fighting the urge to confront the gossiping women. Instead, he turned his attention back to the woman on the bench, his heart aching for her pain and humiliation. He knew what it felt like to be alone, to be judged, to be stripped of hope. And he couldn't just stand by and watch it happen to someone else. Jedediah hesitated, unsure of what to do. He wasn't a man accustomed to offering comfort, especially to strangers. But the sight of Beatrice's distress was too much to bear. He took a deep breath and approached her cautiously. "Ma'am," he said gently, his voice rough but kind. "Are you all right?" Beatrice startled, lifting her head. Her eyes, red and swollen, widened in surprise. She quickly dabbed at her tears with a handkerchief. I don't think I am, sir," she whispered, her voice trembling. Jedediah sat down on the bench beside her, leaving a respectful distance between them. "Is there anything I can do to help?" Beatrice shook her head, fresh tears welling up in her eyes. "No," she choked out. "There's nothing anyone can do." "Those folks were saying you were left at the altar?" Jedediah asked, choosing his words carefully. Beatrice flinched, as if struck. "He didn't even make it to the altar," she sobbed. "He saw me when I got off the train, and he said I was too—" She couldn't bring herself to say the word. Jedediah finished the sentence for her. "Too big." Beatrice nodded, her face crumpling. "He said I wasn't the woman he expected. He said he couldn't marry someone who looked like me." She buried her face in her hands, her body racked with sobs. All those letters, all those promises, it was all a lie. Jedediah felt a pang of sympathy for her. He could only imagine the pain and humiliation she must be feeling. To travel so far, to dream of a new life, only to be rejected so cruelly, it was a devastating blow. He wanted to say something, anything, to ease her pain. "He's a fool, ma'am," Jedediah said, his voice firm. "A man who judges a woman by her size is a fool who doesn't deserve your tears." Beatrice looked up at him, her eyes searching his. Do you really think so?" "I know so," Jedediah replied, meeting her gaze. "A woman's worth isn't measured in pounds or inches. It's measured in her heart, her kindness, her spirit." He paused, then added softly, "And I can see that you have a kind heart, ma'am." Beatrice sniffled, a faint glimmer of hope flickering in her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. That means a lot." Jedediah saw her vulnerability, her raw pain, and her desperate need for acceptance. He knew that he couldn't just walk away and leave her to face this alone. He had to do something. An idea, bold and unexpected, began to form in his mind. It was crazy, impulsive, perhaps even foolish. But he couldn't shake the feeling that it was the right thing to do. He took a deep breath, preparing to speak the words that would change both of their lives forever. Jedediah's heart pounded in his chest. The words felt heavy on his tongue, absurd even as he considered them. Marriage? To a woman he just met? It was madness. He was a simple farmer, a widower still grieving. He had nothing to offer, certainly not a life of luxury or excitement. What was he thinking? Yet the image of Beatrice's tear-streaked face, the raw pain in her eyes, wouldn't leave his mind. He knew what it was like to be alone, to feel unwanted. He knew the gnawing emptiness that came with each passing day, the silent nights that stretched on forever. And he couldn't bear the thought of her facing that same desolation, especially after such a cruel rejection. He thought of Sarah. Would she approve of this impulsive act? He imagined her gentle smile, her unwavering belief in the goodness of people. He imagined her saying, "Jedediah, if you can help someone, you should." He swallowed hard, pushing aside his doubts and fears. He looked at Beatrice, her face etched with sadness and uncertainty. He knew he might be making a mistake, but he also knew that he couldn't live with himself if he didn't try. "Ma'am," he began, his voice trembling slightly. "I know this might sound strange, but I have a proposition for you." Beatrice looked at him, her eyebrows raised in surprise. "A proposition." Jedediah took a deep breath. "Ima widower mang." "My wife, Sarah, passed away 6 months ago. I have a farm. It's not much, but it's home. And it's lonely. Terribly lonely." He paused, gathering his courage. "I know we've just met, but would you consider marrying me?" The words hung in the air between them, heavy and unexpected. Jedediah watched Beatrice's face, searching for any sign of her reaction. He saw shock, disbelief, and a flicker of something else, something that looked like hope. He rushed on, trying to explain himself. "I know it's not a grand proposal, ma'am, and I know I'm not the man you expected to marry, but I'm a good man, I'm a hard worker, and I treat you with respect and kindness. I wouldn't judge you or abandon you. I'd offer you a home, a family, and a chance to start over." He paused again, his heart pounding. "Think about it, ma'am. I know it's a lot to ask, but if you're looking for a fresh start, a place where you can be yourself without fear of judgment, maybe, just maybe, we could make it work." He looked at her, his eyes pleading. "What do you say, ma'am? Will you marry me?" Beatrice stared at Jedediah, her mouth agape. His words echoed in her mind. A strange and unbelievable proposition. Marry him? A complete stranger? After being so publicly rejected, could she possibly trust another man, especially one who seemed so kind? A whirlwind of emotions swirled within her. Hope, a fragile and tentative thing, dared to peek through the layers of hurt and disappointment. Could this be real? Could this be the fresh start she so desperately craved? But fear was a powerful force, whispering insidious doubts in her ear. What if this was some kind of cruel joke? What if he was just trying to take advantage of her vulnerability? What if he, too, would eventually be repulsed by her appearance. She couldn't bear the thought of facing another rejection, another wave of humiliation. I don't know what to say, she stammered, her voice barely a whisper. You hardly know me. Jedediah's offer was tempting, so very tempting. A home, a family, a place where she could be accepted for who she was, not for what she looked like. It was everything she had ever wanted. But after being so thoroughly shattered, could she risk opening her heart again? Why? She asked, her voice laced with suspicion. Why would you want to marry me? You don't even know me. She looked at him, searching his eyes for any sign of deceit. Was he sincere, or was he just feeling sorry for her? She had been pitted before, and it was a feeling she loathed. She didn't want pity. She wanted love, acceptance, and a chance to build a life with someone who truly cared for her. Her mind raced, weighing the pros and cons. On one hand, she had nothing to lose. She was stranded in a strange town, with no money, no friends, and nowhere to go. On the other hand, she risked everything, her heart, her pride, her last shred of hope, on a man she barely knew. She thought of her family, back home. They had warned her about marrying a man she had only corresponded with through letters. They had worried that he wouldn't be who he seemed to be, and they had been right. But Jedediah, there was something different about him, something honest and genuine. Still, the fear lingered, a cold knot in her stomach. Could she trust her instincts? Could she trust him? Or was she destined to be alone forever, a victim of her own appearance? The internal battle raged within her, tearing her in two. Hope and fear, trust and doubt, love and rejection, all vying for control of her heart. She needed more than just kind words. She needed proof, assurance, something to convince her that this wasn't just another cruel illusion. Jedediah understood Beatrice's hesitation. He knew his proposal was outlandish, especially given the circumstances. He had to convince her that he was sincere, that his intentions were pure. Ma'am, my name is Jedediah, he said, offering her a gentle smile. Jedediah Brown, and I know I'm just a simple farmer. I don't have much to offer in the way of riches or fancy things. But I can offer you honesty, respect, and a safe place to call home. He paused, choosing his words carefully. My life, it's been quiet since Sarah passed. The farm feels empty without her laughter, without her touch. I miss having someone to share my days with, someone to talk to in the evenings, someone to hold close at night. He looked at her, his eyes filled with a quiet longing. I'm not looking for a replacement for Sarah, ma'am. She was a special woman, and no one could ever replace her. But I'm looking for companionship, for someone to share my life with. He saw the skepticism in her eyes, the lingering doubt. He knew he had to be completely honest, to lay bare his soul and show her the man he truly was. I saw the way those people were looking at you, ma'am, he continued, his voice softening. The way they whispered and judged. It wasn't right. No one deserves to be treated like that. He reached out and gently touched her hand, his calloused fingers brushing against her soft skin. I admire your resilience, ma'am. Your strength. Despite everything that's happened, you're still sitting here, holding your head high. That takes courage. He squeezed her hand gently, then released it. I'm not offering you a fairy tale, ma'am. Life on my farm is hard work, but it's honest work. And I promise you, I'd never judge you or make you feel ashamed of who you are. I'd appreciate you for your kindness, your spirit, and your willingness to give our life together a chance. He leaned closer, his voice barely a whisper. I need companionship, ma'am, and I believe you do too. Maybe, just maybe we could find that with each other. Maybe we could build a life together, filled with love, respect, and understanding. All I'm asking is for you to give me a chance to show you that I'm sincere, that my intentions are good. Please, ma'am, give us a chance. He looked at her, his eyes pleading. He had laid his heart bare, hoping she would see the gentle soul within. He had nothing more to offer but the truth. Beatrice listened to Jedediah's heartfelt words, her heart slowly thawing. His honesty was disarming, his kindness a balm to her wounded soul. She saw the genuine longing in his eyes, the loneliness that mirrored her own. He wasn't offering her riches or a life of ease, but he was offering her something far more valuable: respect, acceptance, and a chance to be loved for who she truly was. The fear was still there, a nagging voice in the back of her mind, but it was overshadowed by a growing sense of hope, a fragile belief that maybe, just maybe, this could be the answer to her prayers. She had traveled so far, dreamed so big, only to have her hopes shattered in the most humiliating way. But now, standing before her, was a man who saw beyond her appearance, a man who recognized her inner worth. She took a deep breath, summoning all her courage. "Jedediah," she said, her voice trembling slightly. I don't know what the future holds, and I'd be lying if I said I wasn't scared. But I believe you. I believe you're a good man." A tear trickled down her cheek, but this time it was a tear of hope, not despair. "I accept your proposal," she whispered, a faint smile gracing her lips. "I'll marry you." Relief washed over Jedediah's face, erasing the lines of worry and uncertainty. He smiled, a genuine, heartfelt smile that reached his eyes. "Thank you, Beatrice," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "You won't regret this, I promise you." Beatrice felt a surge of gratitude towards Jedediah. He had offered her a lifeline when she was drowning in despair, a second chance when she thought all hope was lost. She knew it wouldn't be easy. They were two strangers, embarking on a journey together with nothing but a shared loneliness and a fragile hope for a better future. But she was willing to take the risk. She was willing to trust him, to believe in him, and to give their marriage everything she had. "I'm ready," she said, her voice filled with a newfound determination. "Let's get married." Jedediah's smile widened. "Then let's not waste any time," he said, standing up and offering her his hand. "I know a preacher in town. I'm sure he'd be willing to marry us today." Beatrice took his hand, her fingers intertwining with his. His touch was warm and reassuring, a promise of comfort and support. As they walked towards town, Beatrice couldn't help but feel a sense of cautious optimism. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, she felt like she was heading in the right direction. Maybe, just maybe, she had found her happily ever after, not in the way she had imagined, but in a way that was even more meaningful and true. She felt grateful for this man, Jedediah, who had seen her worth and offered her a chance at love, at belonging, at a new life. Hand in hand, Jedediah and Beatrice walked through the bustling streets of Harmony Creek, a stark contrast to the quiet solitude they both craved. Jedediah led her towards the small, white-steepled church at the edge of town, hoping that Pastor Miller would be available. Pastor Miller was a kind and understanding man, known for his compassionate heart and his willingness to help those in need. Jedediah had sought his counsel many times since Sarah's passing, and he trusted the pastor's judgment implicitly. They found Pastor Miller tending to the small garden outside the church. He looked up in surprise as they approached, his eyes widening at the sight of Beatrice in her rumpled wedding dress. "Jedediah, my boy, what a pleasant surprise," Pastor Miller boomed, his voice warm and welcoming. "And who is this lovely lady?" Jedediah explained the situation quickly, his voice filled with a mixture of nervousness and hope. He told the pastor about Beatrice's abandonment, his impulsive proposal, and their shared desire for a fresh start. Pastor Miller listened intently, his expression softening with each word. When Jedediah finished, he smiled kindly at Beatrice. "My dear, you've had a difficult day," he said gently, "but it seems the Lord has a plan for you both." He turned to Jedediah. "I'd be honored to marry you," he said, his voice filled with sincerity. "Let's do it right now." The ceremony was simple but heartfelt. The small church was empty save for Jedediah, Beatrice, and Pastor Miller. Sunlight streamed through the stained glass windows, casting a warm glow on their faces. Beatrice, though still wearing her slightly soiled wedding dress, looked radiant, her eyes shining with hope and gratitude. Pastor Miller spoke the familiar words of the marriage ceremony, his voice filled with reverence and compassion. Jedediah and Beatrice exchanged vows, their voices trembling with emotion. Jedediah promised to love and cherish Beatrice, to honor and protect her, and to stand by her side through thick and thin. Beatrice promised to love and respect Jedediah, to support and encourage him, and to create a loving home for them both. When it came time for the rings, Jedediah realized he hadn't thought to buy one. He looked at Beatrice apologetically. I don't have a ring, he stammered. Beatrice smiled gently. It's all right, Jedediah, she said, taking his hand in hers. A ring isn't what matters. It's the promise we've made to each other. Pastor Miller nodded in agreement. The ring is just a symbol, he said. The true commitment lies in your hearts. And so, without a ring, they were pronounced husband and wife. Jedediah lifted Beatrice's veil and gazed into her eyes, his heart overflowing with love and gratitude. He leaned in and kissed her gently, a kiss that sealed their promise, a kiss that marked the beginning of their new life together. It was a simple ceremony, but it was perfect. It was a testament to their courage, their compassion, and their unwavering belief in the power of love. They were married. The wagon ride back to Jedediah's farm was quiet, filled with a mixture of anticipation and awkwardness. They were husband and wife, yet they barely knew each other. The weight of their decision settled upon them, a reality far different from the whirlwind romance of the train station and the church. Jedediah glanced at Beatrice, noticing the way she nervously fidgeted with the fabric of her dress. He knew she must be feeling overwhelmed, stepping into a new life with a stranger, leaving behind everything she had ever known. He wanted to reassure her, to ease her anxieties, but he wasn't sure what to say. The farm isn't much, he said finally, breaking the silence. But it's home, and I'll do my best to make you comfortable. Beatrice smiled faintly. Thank you, Jedediah, she replied. I appreciate that. As they approached the farmhouse, Jedediah couldn't help but feel a pang of guilt. The house was simple and a bit run down, a far cry from the grand home Beatrice had probably dreamed of. He had done his best to keep it tidy since Sarah's passing, but it still lacked the warmth and charm that she had always brought to it. He helped Beatrice down from the wagon, his hands lingering on her waist for a moment longer than necessary. He felt a jolt of electricity, a spark of attraction that surprised him. He quickly pulled away, embarrassed by his own thoughts. The inside of the farmhouse was small but cozy. A large fireplace dominated one wall, and a simple wooden table and chairs sat in the center of the room. A narrow staircase led to the upstairs bedrooms. Beatrice looked around, taking in the details of her new home. She noticed the faded photographs on the mantelpiece, the worn quilt on the rocking chair, the scent of wood smoke and dried herbs that permeated the air. It wasn't fancy, but it was clean and welcoming. It's lovely, Jedediah, she said, her voice filled with genuine appreciation. Jedediah showed her to the master bedroom, a small but comfortable room with a large window overlooking the fields. He had cleared out Sarah's belongings, storing them in a trunk in the attic. The room felt empty and impersonal, a blank canvas waiting to be filled with Beatrice's presence. I hope this is all right, he said, feeling a wave of inadequacy wash over him. It's not much, but Beatrice placed a hand on his arm, her touch gentle and reassuring. It's perfect, Jedediah, she said, her eyes filled with sincerity. It's a new beginning for both of us. That night, they ate a simple supper of beans and cornbread, sitting across from each other at the wooden table. The conversation was stilted and awkward, filled with long silences and hesitant questions. They learned a little about each other's past, their families, their dreams. But they both knew that there was still so much more to discover. As they prepared for bed, the awkwardness intensified. They were married, but they were still strangers. Jedediah offered to sleep on the couch, but Beatrice insisted that he take his rightful place in the bed. They lay side by side in the darkness. The next morning, Beatrice rose early, eager to begin her new life. She found Jedediah already up and tending to the animals, his brow furrowed with worry as he inspected the meager crops. Good morning, she said, her voice bright and cheerful. Jedediah looked up, surprised. Good morning, he replied, a faint smile touching his lips. You didn't have to get up so early. I wanted to, Beatrice said, her eyes sparkling with enthusiasm. I'm ready to work. And worse she did. Beatrice possessed a wealth of skills and talents that Jedediah had never anticipated. She was a skilled seamstress, a talented cook, and a natural gardener. She had a knack for making things beautiful, for bringing life and warmth to even the most desolate surroundings. She started by transforming the farmhouse. She mended the tattered curtains, sewed new cushions for the chairs, and hung colorful quilts on the walls. She organized the pantry, filling it with jars of homemade preserves and pickles. She baked bread, filling the house with the delicious aroma of yeast and flour. Jedediah watched in amazement as Beatrice worked, his heart swelling with gratitude and admiration. He had been so focused on his own grief and loneliness that he had forgotten the simple joys of life. Beatrice reminded him of those joys, bringing laughter and light back into his home. She also transformed the garden. She weeded the flower beds, planted new seeds, and coaxed the struggling plants back to life. She created a vibrant oasis of color and fragrance, a haven for bees and butterflies. Jedediah had never been much of a gardener. He had always focused on the crops, the things that brought in money. But Beatrice showed him the beauty of flowers, the importance of nurturing life, not just for sustenance, but for the sheer joy of it. She also had a way with animals. The chickens, which had been listless and unproductive, began laying eggs again. The cows seemed calmer and happier under her care. Even Betsy and Clyde seemed to perk up, their steps lighter and their spirits brighter. Beatrice's positive influence extended beyond the farmhouse and the garden. She began to help Jedediah with the farm work, her strong hands and unwavering determination surprising him. She learned to milk the cows, to plow the fields, and to harvest the crops. She was a quick learner, and she wasn't afraid of hard work. She also had a gift for bartering. She used her sewing skills to mend clothes for the neighbors, trading her services for eggs, milk, and other goods. She baked pies and cakes, selling them at the local market for a profit. She was a shrewd negotiator, and she always managed to get a good deal. Thanks to Beatrice's skills and warmth, the farm began to thrive. The crops were more plentiful, the animals were healthier, and the income was steadily increasing. Jedediah's financial worries began to fade, replaced by a growing sense of hope and security. But more than that, Beatrice brought life back into Jedediah's home. She filled the empty rooms with laughter, the silent nights with conversation, the lonely days with companionship. She brought love and warmth into his life, reminding him that even after loss, there was still hope for happiness. She transformed his house into a home, his farm into a haven, and his life into a blessing. Despite the blossoming happiness on the farm, not everyone was pleased with Jedediah and Beatrice's unconventional marriage. The townspeople of Harmony Creek were known for their tight-knit community and their adherence to tradition, and Jedediah's impulsive decision to marry a stranger, especially a woman who didn't fit their narrow definition of beauty, raised eyebrows and tongues wagged with gossip. Whispers followed them as they walked through town, their ears burning with the unkind words. "Did you see her? She's twice the size of Jedediah. He must be desperate if he had to marry someone like that. Poor Sarah. She must be rolling in her grave." The whispers turned into outright insults. Some merchants refused to sell to Beatrice, claiming she was taking advantage of Jedediah. Others spread rumors about her past, painting her as a gold digger or worse. Even some of Jedediah's closest friends began to distance themselves, uncomfortable with his choice. The prejudice was particularly harsh towards Beatrice. She was ostracized by the other women in town, excluded from social gatherings, and subjected to cruel taunts and stares. They judged her appearance, her weight, her lack of social graces. They couldn't understand why Jedediah, a respected member of the community, would choose to marry someone like her. Jedediah, too, faced his share of criticism. He was accused of being foolish, of throwing away his life on a woman he barely knew. Some even suggested that he was mentally unstable, still grieving for Sarah and unable to make sound decisions. The prejudice took its toll on both Jedediah and Beatrice. They began to dread going into town, fearing the judgment and hostility they would face. They retreated into themselves, seeking solace in each other's company. But despite the challenges, their love for each other grew stronger. Beatrice, in turn, became Jedediah's rock, offering him unwavering support and encouragement. She reminded him of his own worth, of the good he had done for her, and of the love they shared. She encouraged him to ignore the gossip and to focus on the happiness they had found together. They faced the obstacles as a team, a united front against the prejudice and negativity. They held each other close, reminding each other that their love was stronger than any judgment, their commitment more powerful than any obstacle. They knew that they had found something special in each other, something worth fighting for, and they refused to let the townspeople's gossip and prejudice destroy it. They would face the challenges together, hand in hand, their love a beacon of hope in a world filled with judgment and unkindness. Jedediah, a man of quiet strength, had always avoided confrontation. But seeing the pain and humiliation etched on Beatrice's face fueled a fire within him, a fierce protectiveness that he couldn't ignore. He would not stand idly by while the townspeople tore her down with their cruel words and judgmental stares. One day, while shopping at Mr. Henderson's general store, Jedediah overheard a group of women gossiping about Beatrice. Their voices, though hushed, carried clearly through the small store. "Did you see that dress she was wearing? It looked like it was about to burst at the seams," one woman snickered. "And the way she eats. She'll bankrupt poor Jedediah in no time," another added, earning a chorus of laughter. Jedediah, who had been patiently waiting his turn at the counter, slammed his fist down on the wooden surface, silencing the women instantly. "That's enough," he boomed, his voice filled with righteous anger. "Beatrice is my wife, and I won't tolerate anyone speaking about her with such disrespect." The women gasped, their faces flushed with embarrassment. Mr. Henderson, Jedediah's bold defense of Beatrice had a ripple effect throughout Harmony Creek. While some remained stubbornly prejudiced, others began to see Beatrice in a new light. They saw her kindness, her generosity, and her unwavering commitment to her husband. Beatrice, despite the initial rejection, refused to be bitter or resentful. She was determined to win over the townspeople, not by changing who she was, but by showing them the goodness in her heart. She used her skills and talents to help those in need, proving her worth and gradually earning their respect. When a fire swept through the home of a neighboring family, leaving them with nothing, Beatrice was the first to offer assistance. She rallied the community to donate food, clothing, and supplies. She spent days sewing new garments for the children, cooking meals for the family, and offering them comfort and support. When a severe drought threatened the town's crops, Beatrice shared her knowledge of gardening techniques, teaching others how to conserve water and cultivate drought-resistant plants. She worked tirelessly alongside the farmers, helping them to save their crops and prevent widespread famine. When a deadly flu swept through the town, Beatrice used her knowledge of herbal remedies to care for the sick. She concocted soothing teas, prepared nourishing soups, and nursed the ailing back to health. She worked day and night, tending to the sick and comforting their families. Her kindness extended to everyone, regardless of their past treatment of her. She mended clothes for the poorest families, baked bread for the elderly, and taught sewing lessons to the young girls. She was a beacon of hope and compassion, a ray of sunshine in a world that often seemed dark and dreary. Gradually, the townspeople began to thaw. They saw that Beatrice was not a gold digger or a social outcast, but a kind and generous woman with a heart of gold. They saw her love for Jedediah, her hard work on the farm, and her unwavering commitment to helping others. The women who had once gossiped about her now sought her advice and friendship. The merchants who had refused to sell to her now welcomed her with open arms. Even some of Jedediah's friends, who had initially distanced themselves, began to reconnect, admitting that they had been wrong to judge her. Beatrice's kindness and generosity won over the townspeople, proving that inner beauty is far more important than outward appearance. She showed them that love, compassion, and a willingness to help others can break down even the most stubborn prejudices. She transformed Harmony Creek, not just with her skills and talents, but with her unwavering spirit of kindness and generosity. She proved that one person can make a difference, that one act of kindness can spark a chain reaction of love and compassion. And she did it all with a humble heart and a genuine desire to make the world a better place. Years passed, and the farm flourished under Jedediah and Beatrice's loving care. The crops were bountiful, the animals were healthy, and the farmhouse was filled with warmth and laughter. The prejudice that had once plagued them faded into a distant memory, replaced by a sense of community and acceptance. Jedediah and Beatrice found happiness and fulfillment in their unexpected marriage. They learned to love each other deeply, not just for their outward appearances, but for their inner qualities. They cherished each other's strengths, supported each other's weaknesses, and built a life together based on respect, understanding, and unwavering love. Their family grew too. They welcomed 2 children into their lives, a son named Samuel and a daughter named Sarah, after Jedediah's first wife. The children brought even more joy and laughter into the farmhouse, filling it with the sounds of playful chatter and childish glee. Jedediah and Beatrice taught their children the importance of kindness, compassion, and acceptance. They taught them to look beyond appearances, to judge people by their character, and to treat everyone with respect, regardless of their size, their background, or their beliefs. They created a loving home, a haven where their children could feel safe, secure, and loved unconditionally. They taught them the value of hard work, the importance of community, and the power of love to overcome any obstacle. Years later, Jedediah and Beatrice sat on the porch swing, watching the sunset paint the sky in hues of orange and purple. The same swing where Jedediah had once sat alone, grieving for his lost love, was now a symbol of their shared happiness. Their children, now grown, played in the yard with their own children, filling the air with the sounds of laughter and joy. The farm was a vibrant testament to their love, their hard work, and their unwavering commitment to each other. Jedediah looked at Beatrice, his heart overflowing with love and gratitude. Her face was lined with wrinkles, her hair was streaked with gray, but to him, she was still the most beautiful woman in the world. He saw her kindness, her strength, her unwavering spirit. He saw her heart of gold. He took her hand in his calloused fingers intertwining with hers. "I never thought I could be this happy again," he said, his voice filled with emotion. Beatrice smiled, her eyes shining with love. "Me neither," she said. "But you showed me that there's always hope for happiness, even when you least expect it." They sat in silence for a moment, watching the sunset, their hearts filled with peace and contentment. They had found happiness and fulfillment in their unexpected marriage, creating a loving home and family that was a testament to the power of inner beauty and kindness. Their story was a reminder that true love is not about outward appearances, but about the connection of 2 souls, the sharing of 2 hearts, the unwavering commitment to stand by each other through thick and thin. It was a reminder that kindness, compassion, and acceptance can transform lives, break down prejudices, and create a world filled with love and understanding. And it was a reminder that even in the most unexpected places, even in the most unlikely circumstances, love can blossom and